our next guest.
You're welcome.
I'm not excited for our next guest because we're going to deal with a very serious topic at some point during the conversation. And as I've been very clear, when it comes to cars, when it comes to NASCAR, I am at a loss. I don't like it when people pretend to know things they don't. I know very little. My dad's a NASCAR guy. But our next guest is one of my favorite people in the world. He's also the most talented media person I've ever met in my life. The very first show I interned on was Doug Brauner's Car Czar. I believe it was a Saturday morning. My dad dropped me off in his, 1967 sky blue convertible Cadillac Seville. Doug was outside, said, "Hey, man, that's a nice ride." Dad said, "Thanks," or I don't know what my dad said. But he was super. My dad talked about it for the next 17 years at the Car Czar, complimented his ride. I went, and I think I lasted an hour. Not because of his show, but just because I was irresponsible and lame. Couldn't get up that early. But this is a guy that knows everything about cars I've ever heard. Like I said earlier, somebody calls up and says, "Hey, Car Czar, I have a 1967 Buick Le Mans. And when I get over 50 on the freeway, it goes, what is that?" Then Doug will be like, "Well, actually, what it sounds like, you've got an exhaust pipe that is at 1.21 gigawatts and should be at 1.24. Thanks for the call." Like, what? What the hell? Guy's a cyborg. I love him to death. It's Doug Brauner, the Car Czar. Good morning, my man. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. My head is spinning, because of the hour, but I do remember the first day I met you, and I wasn't aware that you were an intern. What strikes me about that first day we worked together, I thought you so talented, I'm pretty sure we made out in the bathroom.
I didn't think you remembered.
I know I did. There was no tongue or anything.
No.
Why I knew you were an intern.
Heavy hugging.
Yeah, right. It was just hugging. You had a part-time employment to have tongue. Congratulations on the return to the studio.
Thank you, buddy.
I am a bigger fan of yours, and it has been a tough ride for KHTK, which is my ex-home for over 20 years,
yes.
For your parent company, and you guys have handled all of the stresses really impressively, and I'm so proud to have been a part of it for a long time as part of that the KHTK family. Did CCR say, or was it Van Morrison? There's a Van Moon Rising. I'm gonna pivot right to what is dominating the news today and has been, and it's not getting to play. And I'm just going to go through the facts that we know about NASCAR.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, Dave. I'm not looking for commentary. There is no commentary. And it surrounds a couple of people. In April, Kyle Larson, one of the most popular NASCAR drivers, used the N-word live during a television broadcast. Now, that was during when they were
simulated race,
doing e-racing, and it was still that whole ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
He literally used the E-word. NASCAR, kind of fumbled with it, and then finally say, "Well, we're going to ban him for life," but we're really not sure that that's the case. And he's been getting actually some positive press. How that is happening, I don't know.
Again, I don't follow it that much, but I'm sorry, Doug. I don't follow it enough, but I've been reading, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't he on a lower circuit, and he won 7 truck races in a row? I mean, literally, last week was his 6th or 7th. Yeah. He's tearing it up.
I mean, setting aside from the fact that the guy's a complete moron, he can drive. And so, he dropped down. It would be like going back down to AA ball.
Okay.
And he's dominating in a lesser series that doesn't get anywhere near the money and or the attention. But that just goes to show you it's still NASCAR affiliated,
right?
And so that really is going to pivot me here to Bubba Wallace, who drives the number 14 car. I'm going to hit just a couple of points here. Bubba Wallace is a decent driver. He's not the best driver in NASCAR, but he's a good driver.
Sure.
He is African-American. He is the only African American who drives in NASCAR. The last time NASCAR had an African American driver was in 1971. I want you to let that sink in for a second. NASCAR has not had an African American driver full time, all the rides, all the races since 1971. So what do they do? And they being NASCAR, because what happened within the confines of a secure NASCAR compound. The garage area in NASCAR is similar to the King's locker room, to give you an analogy that you would understand.
Sure.
You're not just walking into the King's locker room and saying, yo, what up? You're walking in there as a credentialed reporter, somebody. There's security cameras all around. Well, over the weekend, somebody put a noose in Bubba Wallace's car.
Yeah.
Today, I found out that Sonoma Raceway, the raceway in Sonoma that we all know that features their annual NASCAR event, did not disclose, at least to me, and I'm a full-time real race journalist, that on Saturday, 5 days ago, they also discovered a noose at their track.
Really?
That's true. I confirmed it this morning with media relations at Sonoma on a phone call because it leaked. So here's what we've got. Now we have 2 noose incidents within the last week. This all after NASCAR 2 weeks ago self-congratulates to the point that they're breaking their own arms, patting themselves on the back by saying, after all this time, they're not going to allow Confederate flags anymore. 10 years ago, Dave, on my show, in the chair you're sitting in, I had become so disgusted. I have covered races from California to the Carolinas to Texas. I mean, if there's a track, I've been to it. Look, I grew up in the Bronx. You got to be careful with what you put out there, or somebody will put something even worse back to you. You just don't do that. Less is more. So I came back to Sacramento and I said, I don't understand. This is 10 years ago. I said, how the hell does a sport as big as NASCAR, the number one spectator sport in the country, allow the flying of the Confederate flag? And the analogy that I'll use, and I'll let you respond, do you think that if I went to the Golden One Arena during a Kings game and decided to drop a swastika from the rooftop, that the NBA would just go, oh, that's cool. That kind of hits our fan base.
Yeah.
That's red meat for our fans. Let's leave it there. In fact, let's sell them at our concession stands, which is what NASCAR does with the Confederate flag up until, 2 weeks ago. It is disgusting. It is reprehensible, and I'm sick of it. And I will spend the rest of the day writing pieces and being interviewed by brilliant journalists like yourself saying, when the hell did NASCAR lose their mind? It is a sport that was built on the backs of racism. They monetize racism. They promote it. And what is truly disgusting, I live like you do in Northern California because it's a progressive-minded area where we listen to each other, even when we have problems. As Oakland burned last week, as BLM did an amazing job at opening in our ears, 30 miles away at Sonoma Raceway, 30 miles, they're getting nooses made, and nobody's talking about it. It didn't make the news. They hit it. Steve Page, who runs Sonoma, who I've always thought is a good guy, should resign. NASCAR should be disbanded. And by the way, the whole Confederate flag thing in Talladega, yeah, they didn't let anybody in who obviously was carrying one, but there were planes flying overhead constantly with the flag. I'm done. It needs to be defunded. You want to talk about defunding the police. How about NASCAR and their sponsorships. All just say enough is enough. Last final word. Confirmed today that the investment company of Goldman Sachs, that's where you put your money, I know, because you're wealthy.
Super rich.
That the France family, the only entity to ever own NASCAR, has approached Goldman Sachs to sell NASCAR.
Yep.
So they know it's over. They know it's over, but so they're not going to do anything about it. I've taken a lot of your time.
No. I want to talk about this.
It's just what if it were any other sport?
I want to talk to you about this as Doug Brauner of the Car Czar joins us, who has forgotten more about cars than I've ever forgotten more about cars in the last 5 minutes than I've known in my entire life combined, and many of you. Finally, because there's so much ignorance on my part and many others who aren't into NASCAR, we understand the periphery. Obviously, there's different things going on right now. One of the questions I've been wondering, and I wanted to ask somebody that knew what they were talking about, in your opinion, Doug, do you think if you lay out a business model, let's get rid of the morale, let's just put the morality aside right now for a second. You have a NASCAR business model. So on one side of the paper, you have the amount, you talked about NASCAR, you said built on racism, promoting, selling, profiting off of, et cetera. So NASCAR, for lack of a better term, gets woke, or as most of us say, gets, normal. And the Confederate flags go away, and all the other things that need to happen to bring the sport into this millennium. They're going to lose a lot of their base, the good old boy network. They're going to lose a lot of their base fans. So let's put that on the right side of this white paper we have in front of us. On the left side of the paper is going to be the publicity that they're getting right now for making some of these changes, the further publicity they would get at doing good things and at really truly trying to fix the sport. People like me, I opened the show, Doug, talking about this. I've never been able to get into it, but yesterday I'm watching Bubba Wallace. What was it? The number 43 car, kind of light blue. I'm rooting for him. I'm watching the end of that race when what's his face crossed the whole track and some car,
1 by inches. Sure.
Yeah, it slid his ass across for third place, and for the first time in my entire life, even though my dad's tried to get me into it my whole life, first time in my life, I was legitimately into and excited and adrenalized at the end of a NASCAR race. It was because of Bubba Wallace and because of everything going on. So my question is, right side of the paper, the money they're going to lose from the good old boy network that loves the racism and doesn't want it to go away. Left side of the paper, perhaps new fans like me and so many others that are like, wow, let me give this thing a chance. I got somebody to root for now. I'm into it. Are they going to, in your opinion, over the next 5 to 10 years, lose more money from losing that segment of fans or gain more money because of the new fans that will join in, if you had to guess?
If I had to guess, the sport needs to go away. And here's why. It's built, the racism is systemic. The red meat, the base, the food they feed their fans is racist inherently. The overwhelming majority of races, and we're talking about auto races, are in the South. That's where their moneymaker is. They sell way more tickets, disproportionately more tickets, and the merch in the South. That is where they've concentrated their efforts. I remember there was a proposal to build a NASCAR track up near Sleep Train Amphitheater. Mm-hmm. That died. They were going to build one in Lower Manhattan where the Hudson project is. That died because the France family knew that anybody with more than a 7th grade education would never embrace a sport like this that lacks even the most basic diversity. We used to joke on my show, you needed a tube top minimum with 4 really crappy tattoos just to get a beer for $9. I mean, this on a socioeconomic scale, their fans are not exactly stellar. Now, I'm not saying that, and who's responsible? NBC, Fox, they've seen their ratings erode. It's not the sport it once was, because it's you know what it is, Dave. Honestly, it's 1950, and we all get excited because finally they allowed Jackie Robinson to put on a major league uniform, and they all and half the place went crazy, and the other half didn't. So yes, can they reorganize? Sure, but it's going to take them 50 years because it takes that long to undo the damage that racism does. Racism isn't a one-off. And for people like you and other people in media who I lit up yesterday who said the exact same thing as you did, oh, it brought a tear to my eye to see everybody galvanize Bubba Wallace. Oh, really? The guy you called the N-word 2 weeks ago? And the guy that somebody left a noose in?
Yeah.
So all you guys got behind him and yesterday pushed him to the front of the line. He came in 14th, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. You know, that's a Penn and Teller magic show. That's smoke and mirrors. Dude, this stuff comes from the top. It's never going to end. I don't think the France family wants to end. And I'll say this because this is a local radio show. I asked specifically, and I usually don't ask questions in advance of interviews. I asked Sonoma Raceway, will you divest yourself of your partnership with NASCAR? Meaning, will you give that race up? Sonoma Raceway is one of the busiest raceways in the country. They have events every weekend. They have hot rod racing. They have IndyCar, all that. I said specifically, will you divest or will you condemn NASCAR for their actions? And I got the standard canned response. I'll put it on my Facebook page about how Sonoma Raceway continues to commit to diversity in all sports. Freaking unbelievable. Because God forbid you tell somebody that what the sport is founded on no longer is okay. It was never okay. But if you really want to talk about opening our ears and you really want to be honest, it's wrong. And it's always been wrong. And I've had nooses. And I don't like the fact that they had the noose right in our own backyard in Sonoma.
Sure.
And
I think that's important too. Listen, a noose in a garage of an African American driver, whether it's here or New Zealand or Croatia or wherever, is a horrific thing. Full stop. But I think stereotypically people go, oh, well, there was a noose in a garage in Alabama. Well, okay, that fits. A noose in the Bay Area in California. I think a message there is that, you know, listen, this isn't in those stereotypically backwoods parts of the country. This is in our backyard. This is everywhere. This
right.
can happen
and
anywhere.
And Sonoma Raceway draws the bulk of their audience from Stockton, Modesto, and San Francisco, which is so ironic given our professed progressive nature. And I don't like the fact that they didn't come out with it. They should have been out in front of it. So once again, we see reactive responses to what are, and we hear the word systemic, and we're all like, half the people, I don't even know what that word means. Let me tell you what systemic means. Yeah, they're tying nooses in Alabama in the garages of black drivers, and now they're tying nooses at NASCAR tracks in Sonoma in an attempt to intimidate and threaten the track that you better not be making any changes, or possibly you better not be banning any flags, or you better not be upsetting the norm that has become NASCAR. I loved the sport, Dave. One of my kids was like 3 months old. I stuffed her ears full of lamb's wool and brought her to her first race. That's how much I love the sport. I covered the sport. I consider guys like Jeff Gordon to be incredible. I can't get a hold of him, but I've interviewed him dozens of times. I've interviewed Tony Stewart dozens of times. The guy's a moron, but I interviewed Dale Earnhardt. I've interviewed Junior. I've interviewed them all.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the sport has got to shut down and reorganize. And if it's going to continue, especially in the market in which I live, become more representative of the people with whom I live. And it's not.
We are so completely out of time because that never a segment goes slow with Doug Brauner, the Car Czar. Do me a favor, buddy. Later today, anything you put out, anything you write, just text me, and I'll make sure to get out there as well. It's been way too long. I love you. I love your family.
Love you too.
I love your knowledge, and come visit us again soon, okay, buddy?
You got it. We'll get some bad pizza together soon.
Thanks. Thank you very much. That's Doug Brauner. That's the Car Czar.
It's the Carmichael Dave Show on Sports 1140 KHTK.